Right bracket chapter 12. The doctrine of the devil. This is one of the most inconsistent ideas that could be possibly entertained in the mind of man. It is called the transmigration of souls. Brigham Young JD 1:93. An interesting confrontation occurred between the prophet Joseph Smith and a man by the name of Robert Matthias, who also called himself Joshua. The man claimed to have lived before on the earth, and that he was even one of the original 12 apostles of Christ. His doctrine promoted the idea that men can live on the earth and then come back again as another person. The story of this man was recorded by the prophet Joseph as follows. Monday, November the 9th, 1835. While sitting in my house, between 10 and 11 this morning, a man came in and introduced himself to me by the name of Joshua, the Jewish minister. His appearance was something singular, having a beard about 3 inches in length, quite grey, also his hair was long and considerably silvered with age. I thought him about 50 or 55 years old, tall, straight, slender built, of thin visage, blue eyes, and fair complexion, wore a sea green frock coat and pantaloons, black fur hat with narrow brim, and, while speaking, frequently shut his eyes, with a scowl on his countenance. I made some inquiry after his name, but received no definite answer. We soon commenced talking on the subject of religion, and, after I had made some remarks concerning the Bible, I commenced giving him a relation of the circumstances connected with the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, as recorded in the former part of this history. While I was relating a brief history of the establishment of the Church of Christ in the last days, Joshua seemed to be highly entertained. When I had closed my narration, I observed that the hour of worship and dinner had arrived, and invited him to tarry, to which he consented. After dinner, the conversation was resumed, and Joshua proceeded to make some remarks on the prophecies. As follows: he observed that he was aware that I could bear stronger meat than many others, therefore he should open his mind the more freely. I told Joshua I did not understand his remarks on the resurrection, and wished him to explain. He replied that he did not feel impressed by the Spirit to unfold it further at present, but perhaps he might at some future time. I then withdrew to transact some business with the gentleman who had called to see me, when Joshua informed my scribe that he was born in Cambridge, Washington County, New York. He says that all the railroads, canals, and other improvements are projected by the spirits of the resurrection. The silence spoken of by John the Revelator, which is to be in heaven for the space of half an hour, is between 1830 and 1851, during which time the judgments of God will be poured out. After that time there will be peace. Curiosity to see a man that was reputed to be a Jew caused many to call during the day, and more particularly in the evening. Suspicions were entertained that the said Joshua was the noted Matthias of New York, spoken so much of in the public prints, on account of the trials he endured in that place, before a court of justice, for murder, manslaughter, contempt of court, whipping his daughter, etc. For the last 2 crimes he was imprisoned, and came out about 4 months since. After some equivocating, he confessed that he really was Matthias. After supper I proposed that he should deliver a lecture to us. He did so, sitting in his chair. He commenced by saying, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, which he dwelt upon throughout his discourse. He made some very excellent remarks, but his mind was evidently filled with darkness. After the congregation dispersed, he conversed freely upon the circumstances that occurred in New York. His name is Robert Matthias. He says that Joshua is his priestly name. During all this time I did not contradict his sentiments, wishing to draw out all that I could concerning his faith. Tuesday, November the 10th. I resumed conversation with Matthias, and desired him to enlighten my mind more on his views respecting the resurrection. He said that he possessed the spirit of his fathers, that he was a literal descendant of Matthias, the apostle, who was chosen in the place of Judas that fell, that his spirit was resurrected in him, and that this was the way or scheme of eternal life, this transmigration of soul or spirit from father to son. I told him that his doctrine was of the devil, that he was in reality in possession of a wicked and depraved spirit, although he professed to be the spirit of truth itself, and he said also that he possessed the soul of Christ. He tarried until Wednesday, 11th, when, after breakfast, I told him that my God told me that his God was the devil, and I could not keep him any longer, and he must depart. And so I, for once, cast out the devil in bodily shape, and I believe a murderer. DHC 2:304-307. That same year, 1835, William L. Stone wrote a book entitled Matthias and His Impostures, about the life and beliefs of this notorious man, whose actual name was Robert Matthews. Stone states that Matthews was about 45 years old at the time he met Joseph Smith. He was an orphan at an early age, had 2 brothers, was married in 1813, went broke in a mercantile business venture, and joined a Scotch church where he had some personal difficulties with the minister. He had an increasing interest in religious matters and finally met a Rev. Kirk, to whom he became very strongly attached and adopted many of his doctrinal views. Among Matthew's religious teachings was that strong drinks and meat should be avoided, and that the main source of food should be bread, fruits, and vegetables. He claimed this information was given to him in a revelation. About this time he grew a beard and began to preach, prophesying that Albany, New York, would be destroyed and urged people to leave. It was now that he assumed the name of Matthias, and gave out that he was a Jew. He then departed upon his mission for the conversion of the world. From thence he turned his steps to the southeast and traversed the states of Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and commenced preaching to the Indians. Matthias and His Impostures, pages 29 to 30. Matthews collected a small following of members to whom he taught to abstain from costly articles of dress or furniture, to drink neither tea or coffee, and in short, to deny themselves all the luxuries and most of the comforts of life. Ibid. Page 50. He also taught them to fast 1 or 2 days a week. He met a Mr. Elijah Pearson, who began preaching in June of 1830, and among his teachings was a belief in reincarnation. Elias, as everybody knows, was only another name for John the Baptist, and hence he concluded that the spirit of John the Baptist had taken up his abode in him, and that he was the forerunner of Matthias. Ibid. Page 106. When Elijah Pearson met an old friend, Mr. Hervey, he was greeted by another person mentioned only as MHS, and was told by him that he, Elijah, was John the Baptist. The following conversation took place. Mr. Hervey: is that the gentleman to whom you alluded as being the Shiloh? MHS: oh no, sir. This is John the Baptist, who is not worthy to unloose even the shoe latches of the one who is upstairs. On approaching yet nearer to this grotesque and demure-looking gentleman, and scrutinizing him closely, the dialogue was continued. Mr. Hervey: why, you are my old friend Pearson, whom I have met abroad. Surely, surveying him yet more closely, you are Elijah Pearson, nothing more or less. And do you presume to say that you are the veritable John the Baptist? Surely you do not pretend to say that this head upon your shoulders, laying his hand upon his head, is the very identical head that was taken off by Herod and brought to his daughter in a charger? MHS: the very same. Mr. Pearson: no, I do not mean to be understood as saying that this head of mine is the very same head that was cut from the body of John the Baptist, but I mean to say that the spirit of Elijah Pearson, leaving this tabernacle, significantly pointing to his heart, the spirit of Elijah the prophet thereupon entered and abode for a while, and that now the spirit of John the Baptist has taken the place of that of Elijah. And therefore I may justly be considered, and am, in fact, and to all intents and purposes, John the Baptist. Ibid. Page 125. This same Mr. Pearson, claiming to be John the Baptist, was later supposedly killed by this Matthews, who was the Apostle Matthias. It didn't sound characteristic of 2 great spirits from the past. In April of 1835, Matthews was arraigned for the murder of his friend, Mr. Pearson, supposedly on the basis of evidence that he gave him a deadly substance, which was found in the stomach of his friend. The two had been having some disagreements about tilling the ground. When Pearson began to go into convulsions from poison, Matthews said it was caused by 50 devils. The judge told the jury that there was no evidence that Matthews had given the poison to Pearson, so the jury returned the verdict of not guilty. But as soon as that was over, he received another indictment for assaulting his 18-year-old daughter, Isabella Lansdell, with a whip. A rather humorous incident occurred when Matthias met a man and began to explain that he was Matthias, the ancient apostle. Mr. F ____________, said he, how long do you think I have been upon this earth? Indeed, I have no idea, sir, was the reply. Well, I will tell you, rejoined the prophet, more than 1800 years. Mr. F underscore 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 underscore, knowing nothing as to the peculiarity of his character at the time, it may be imagined, was somewhat surprised at so extraordinary an enunciation, and scanning him from top to toe, involuntarily exclaimed, "The D underscore 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 D you have, do you tell me so?" "I do," observed the other. "Then all I have to say is, that you are a remarkably good-looking fellow for one of your age." Matthews put on one of his sardonic grins, and with an indignant scowl, replied, "You are a devil, sir," and walked immediately away. Ibid. Page 276. The case of Matthias, claiming to be an ancient apostle, has been well known throughout church history, and labeled as a doctrine of the devil. Some of the church authorities have commented on this historical incident, 4 of which are included here. Joseph Fielding Smith. Christ was born a babe at Bethlehem. That is where he got his body, and the only physical body or body of right bracket flesh and bones that he ever had or ever will have. The doctrine of reincarnation is, says the prophet Joseph, the doctrine of the devil. Of course the devil will teach people any doctrine that will contradict the truth. Doc. of Sal. 1:18. Reincarnation is a doctrine of devils, according to the prophet Joseph Smith. There is nothing in the scriptures or in the gospel that teaches such a doctrine, but to the contrary, we are taught that each individual will rise in the resurrection to die no more. Imp. Era, 1914, 17:993. Bruce R. McConkie. Reincarnation or the transmigration of souls, the rebirth of the same spirits in new bodily forms in successive ages, is a false doctrine originating with the devil. TPJS, pages 104 to 105, it runs counter to the whole system and plan of salvation whereunder spirits are born in pre-existence, are permitted to pass through a mortal probation, and then in due course become immortal, incorruptible, and eternal in nature. Mormon Doctrine, page 624. John A. Widsoe. Contrast these feeble, lame, and incomprehensible explanations with the true doctrine of pre-existence, as taught in the Gospel of Jesus Christ. Reincarnation fails utterly to comprehend the meaning of the human body. Reincarnation rests upon an unsound foundation, hence is dangerous, and should be avoided. Page 366. The continuous changing of bodies makes the resurrection and any redeeming act unnecessary. It places the Christ in the class of fakers. A Christian cannot believe in reincarnation. Evid. and Recon. 1960 ed. Page 369. James E. Talmage. The false doctrine of transmigration or reincarnation of spirits was repudiated by the Jews. Jesus the Christ, page 375. There were few individuals in the early days of the Church who did believe in the transmigration of spirits to be born again and again. Although transmigration has no counterpart in Orthodox Mormon theology, it was central to the teachings of Charles B. Thompson, a Mormon who withdrew from the leadership of Brigham Young when he moved west. Joseph Morris and the Saga of the Morrisites, see Leroy Anderson, page 39. In April of 1850, Thompson received a revelation that explicitly contained the principle of regeneration, transmigration. "And now behold, I send unto you, my servant, Charles B. Thompson, in which is regenerated my dear son Ephraim my firstborn, with the voice of Banami." Ibid. Page 40. Joseph Morris also received a revelation that Seth filled his second mission in the person of Moses, and is filling his third in the person of Joseph Morris. The Spirit Prevails, Joseph Morris, page 644. It is interesting to note that these persons who believed in regeneration, transmigration, or similar doctrines were always being fed revelations. If such a doctrine was of the devil as Joseph Smith said, then the source of these revelations supporting that doctrine is obvious. Because of the experience the prophet Joseph Smith had with a man who claimed to have lived before, we have his final words on the subject. "It is a doctrine of the devil. This should suffice.